The candles along the gallery of Wintersmere House burned so bright that Marisol Ashcombe could see the gold thread in her own sleeve, and wished that she could see it on anyone else instead. The gown was not hers. The gloves were not hers. The ivory fan trembling against her ribs wasn't hers. Even the pearls at her throat belonged to her sister, and if Marisol tilted her chin the wrong way, she could feel them cold against the pulse that would not stop racing. Her sister's name was Cressida. She had been born 4 minutes before Marisol, and she had never let either of them forget it. 2 hours earlier, Cressida had been weeping into a silk cushion in their shared dressing room, and 2 hours earlier, Marisol had said the 4 words that had put her in this gallery tonight. I will go instead. Now, standing at the edge of the long ballroom with 300 strangers between her and the door, Marisol understood that 4 words were the smallest thing in the world, and also the largest. The orchestra was halfway through a country dance. The floor was a swirl of cream and pale green and ruby silk. Somewhere on the other side of that floor, according to Cressida's whispered instructions, stood Lord Harlan Vere, the Duke of Thorncliffe, who had written to their father 3 weeks ago asking permission to make Cressida's formal acquaintance at the Wintersmere ball. He had never seen Cressida. That had been the entire saving grace of the plan. Marisol had been told that he was tall, that he had dark hair, that he was 33, that he was, according to the gossip her sister had collected with the thoroughness of a natural historian, cold, exacting, loyal to his mother, not given to laughter, and in need of a wife before the end of the season, for reasons his household would not discuss. She had also been told that the match had been arranged in principle between her father and the Dowager Duchess, and that Cressida was expected to speak with the Duke tonight for no longer than a quarter of an hour, during which she was to say very little, smile once, and permit him to form whatever impression he wished to form. A quarter of an hour. Marisol had agreed, in the dressing room, that she could manage a quarter of an hour. She had not yet managed one. A footman glided past her with a tray of lemon cordial. Marisol took a glass she did not want, and held it as if it were evidence of her composure. Her sister's perfume clung to her wrists and announced to everyone who passed that she was here under another woman's name. Across the floor, a man turned. He had been speaking to an older woman in plum silk. He had been half listening, half scanning the room, and then his eyes found Marisol and did not continue moving. She knew without anyone telling her that this was Lord Vere. He was taller than the men around him. His coat was very dark, almost black, without ornament. He was not handsome in the careful arranged way of the younger men along the walls. He was handsome the way a north-facing wall of a house was handsome, with everything load-bearing and nothing decorative. His mouth was set as if he had forgotten how to rearrange it. He looked at her for 3 full seconds before the older woman touched his sleeve and drew him back into her sentence. Marisol set the lemon cordial down on a side table behind her without looking away. This was the moment, Cressida had told her, to cross the floor, to walk along the edge, not through the dancers, and be intercepted near the second pair of pillars. Their father had arranged for a mutual acquaintance to make the introduction. Marisol was to smile once. Only once. She walked. The gallery was longer than it had seemed from the doorway. A young officer swept past her in pursuit of his partner, and she had to step back, quickly, against a pillar, and the cold of the marble through her gown surprised her into a small, involuntary sound. A hand caught her elbow from behind. Not hard. Steady. She turned, already forming an apology, and found herself eye to eye with the Duke of Thorncliffe at a distance of less than a foot. He had crossed the floor faster than she had. "I beg your pardon," he said. "You were nearly struck." His voice was lower than she had expected, and quieter. A man who had learned early that a big room did not require a big voice. "I was not paying attention," she said. "I am sorry." On the contrary, his eyes moved over her face once, without hurry. "The fault belongs to the gentleman who failed to look where he was going. Are you hurt?" "No. Thank you." He did not release her elbow immediately. She became aware of him the way one becomes aware of weather, as a condition of the air. "Miss Ashcombe," he said. "I believe." The name hit her like cold water, because it was, technically, her name. Ashcombe. Both of them were Ashcombe. But he meant Cressida. "Yes," she said. "You must forgive me," he said, "for introducing myself without a third party. I have been waiting for a third party who intends to spend the evening somewhere else." He released her arm and bowed. "Harlan Vare," he said. "I am told our fathers have been writing to each other." She had rehearsed a curtsy. She remembered none of it. "My father has been writing. I have been reading over his shoulder." Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. It was not quite a smile, but it was the first evidence that he had a mouth that could do anything other than close. "Then I have been introduced twice," he said, "and you have the advantage. You have not been introduced at all, Your Grace, only identified." Now the near smile went further. "Will you walk with me, Miss Ashcombe?" He did not phrase it as a question. He offered his arm. She took it because she could not think of a way to refuse that did not require her to explain herself. The moment her hand settled into the crook of his elbow, she felt the heat of him through the wool of his sleeve, and realized that for the next quarter of an hour, she was not going to be thinking about Cressida at all. They walked the length of the gallery. He did not speak at once. Marisol had been prepared for interrogation, for careful questions about her father's estates and her accomplishments on the pianoforte, and she had rehearsed answers to all of them. He asked none. What he said, when he finally spoke, was, "You do not wish to be here." She stopped walking. He stopped with her. He did not look at her. He looked at the dancers as if they were weather he was reading. "Forgive me," he said. "That was discourteous. I ought to have asked instead." She said, "How did you know?" "You looked at the door 3 times before you saw me." "I looked at the door once. I was watching." The words landed between them with no flourish. She looked at his profile and could not read it. "Are you always so direct, Your Grace?" "No," he said. "Not always." "Then why tonight?" He did look at her then. His eyes were not the gray-blue the gossip had promised. They were closer to the color of wet slate. There was nothing flirtatious in them. There was, instead, something she had not encountered at a ball before, which was attention. Real attention. The kind a person paid to a letter they did not yet understand. "Because I have spent 3 months preparing to meet a woman I did not wish to meet," he said. "And in the first minute of meeting her, I find that I am relieved." "Relieved," she repeated. He inclined his head. "Of what?" she asked. "Of the fear that I would be bored." She felt the heat come up her neck in a way that was absolutely visible above the line of her sister's pearls, and was, she realized a second later, precisely the thing she had been warned not to let him see. "You don't know me," she said. "No," he agreed. "I don't. But I know what bored looks like, and you are not it." The orchestra changed tune. Couples were gathering for the next set. "Your Grace," she said, "I think I must tell you something." She did not know what she had been about to say. She did not know whether she had been about to tell him the truth or invent an excuse to leave. She never found out, because at that moment, a woman she had never seen before stepped neatly between them with the ease of someone stepping through a door she owned. "Harlan," the woman said, "you are monopolizing. Your mother is looking for you. She sent me personally." "Aunt Clemence," he said, without taking his eyes off Marisol. "May I present Miss Ashcombe?" "Of course," said Aunt Clemence. "Of course it is, Miss Ashcombe." "My dear, you are just as your father described. You must come and meet my sister at once. She has been dreadful all evening, and the sight of a pretty girl will restore her." Marisol felt the aunt's hand close on her other arm, the way a kind jailer closes a gate. "Your Grace," she said. Harlan Vare bowed. "Until later, Miss Ashcombe." It was not a farewell. It was a promise. She was led away, Aunt Clemence talking the entire distance without requiring any answer. And when Marisol looked back over her shoulder once, Lord Vare was still standing exactly where she had left him, watching her go. She did not return home until after 1 in the morning, and when she did, she walked past her sister's room without opening the door, because she did not know, yet, how to tell Cressida what had just happened. She did not know, yet, that she had already failed. She only knew that a man who had agreed to marry her sister had, in the space of 12 minutes, looked at her in a way that no man had ever looked at her before, and that she had liked it. That was the first mistake. The second was worse. When she finally sat down on the edge of her own bed and took off her sister's pearls and laid them on the little table by the lamp, she found, folded inside her glove where she could not remember putting it, a card. Thick cream paper, a single line in a careful upright hand. "Miss Ashcombe," it read, "I should very much like to call on you tomorrow." HV. He had put it in her glove during those 12 minutes, and she had not felt him do it. She read the card 3 times. Then she sat very still in her sister's gown, in her sister's perfume, holding a card addressed to a name that belonged to neither of them entirely, and understood that whatever game she had agreed to play in the dressing room 2 hours earlier was not the game she was playing now. Downstairs, a clock struck 2. Upstairs, behind the door she had walked past, her sister Cressida was already awake, and already waiting, and already asking, through the wall, in a voice pitched not to carry to the servants, what had taken her so long. Marisol folded the card in half and slid it under the lamp, out of sight. "Coming," she called back, and she went. The house was quiet when Marisol reached her own door. Only a single candle burned on the hall table, left there by the footman who locked up. She went through her sister's room first, because there was no avoiding it, and because Cressida had a way of enlarging any silence she was not part of until it collapsed on the person who had made it. Cressida was sitting up in bed in a white wrapper, her dark hair braided over one shoulder, a book open on her lap that she was not reading. She looked, Marisol thought with the strange new clarity the evening had given her, exactly like herself. Not like Marisol, not like a woman any man could confuse with another. Cressida had the same face, and the same hair, and the same height, and she was still, in every way that mattered, a different person. "Well," Cressida said. "It was done," Marisol said. "The introduction. He was civil." "Civil?" "Yes." Cressida closed the book with one finger inside it. "You were gone longer than a quarter of an hour. I was detained by a lady called Aunt Clemence." "Aunt Clemence," Cressida repeated, as if tasting the words. "Is she someone we ought to know?" "She is the Duke's aunt." "Ah." Cressida set the book on the bedside table with a small, deliberate click. "Did he speak to you? Did he look at you? Did he give you any indication of what he meant by this?" "He was civil," Marisol said again. "Do not make me drag it out of you like a child with a splinter. Was he pleased? Was he indifferent? Did he ask to call on us?" The card was in her glove upstairs, folded once, and slid beneath the lamp. Marisol felt it there, the way one feels a locked door in the next room. "He said the word later," she said, which was true. He did not ask to call. Cressida exhaled with a relief that was almost offensive. "Thank heaven," she said. "Thank heaven." "Oh, Mari, You cannot imagine what I have been sitting here thinking. If he had been enamored, if he had demanded to call on me tomorrow, I should not have been able to bear it. You know I cannot bear it. You know what I promised." "I know," Marisol said. She did know. She had known for 3 months, since the afternoon Cressida had come back from the vicar's garden party, with flushed cheeks and a secret she would not tell anyone else. The secret was a man named Elias Corvin. He was the second son of a banker. He had no title and no great fortune, and Cressida had chosen him anyway, and for 3 months had been writing to him in a box she kept behind her Latin grammar. Their father did not know. Their mother did not know. The Dowager Duchess did not know. The only person who knew was Marisol, who had been sworn to silence with a ferocity that still surprised her. That was why she had gone to the ball tonight. Her sister had been promised to a man she could not marry, and had been unable to go and meet him without her face betraying everything. And Marisol, who had always been the quieter one, the one who could be trusted to be invisible in a room, had offered to wear the gown and carry the name. It was meant to be a delay. A single meeting, well handled, which would send the Duke back to his mother to say that the Ashcombe girl was agreeable enough, but that he wished to take more time. Long enough for Cressida to write to Elias, and for Elias to come to their father and make his case. Later, Cressida said slowly, "Is a strange word for a man to use." It was a strange evening. In what way? In that a great many people were looking at one another and not saying what they meant. Cressida studied her across the room. "You are different," she said. "I am tired." "You are different," Cressida said again, and reached up to take Marisole's hand, as she used to when they were small. "Did anything happen?" she said. "Tell me." "Nothing happened," Marisol said. The lie came out of her mouth in her own voice and sounded nothing like her own. Cressida did not notice. She was already on to the next subject. The Morning Post, the letters she needed Marisol to carry to Elias, the maid who must be gotten rid of because she had twice opened a letter not addressed to her. Marisol listened and nodded, and when Cressida finally released her hand, she went to her own room and shut the door and leaned her forehead against the wood. The card was still under the lamp. She lit a taper and read it again in her own room, though she had it already by heart. "Miss Ashcombe, I should very much like to call on you tomorrow. H.V." Tomorrow meant this morning. It was already past 2. She went to her desk and sharpened a pen she did not need to sharpen, and looked at a sheet of paper and did not write on it. She had at most 6 hours before a footman might knock at the Ashcombe door with an inquiry from Thorncliffe House about what hour would suit. 6 hours to decide what to do. She could tell her father. She could tell Cressida. She could compose a note herself, signed with Cressida's name, declining the visit on the grounds of a sudden indisposition. She did none of those things. She sat with the card in her lap and thought about a man crossing a ballroom faster than she had, and about the way he had said, "relieved," and about how she had spent 23 years being the quieter twin and had not, in any of them, been looked at by a man in wet slate eyes who had told her she was not boring. Dawn came in around the curtain while she was still sitting there. At 7:30, a knock came at her door. "Miss Marisol," said the maid, through the wood. "There is a card been sent round from Thorncliffe. His Grace asks if 11 this morning would suit for him to call on Miss Ashcombe." Marisol looked at her own hands for a long moment before she answered. "Tell the footman," she said, "that 11 will suit." "And which Miss Ashcombe?" said the maid. "Shall I tell her ladyship's maid to dress?" Marisol did not answer at once, because the truth was that at 11 this morning, Cressida was supposed to be calling on Elias Corvin's mother in the country of 2 streets, over under the pretense of visiting a dying friend, and she would not be in the house. "Cressida," Marisol said. "Dress Cressida." The maid went away. Marisol sat at her desk and understood, with the same cold clarity she had felt standing in the gallery, that the quarter of an hour she had agreed to manage in the dressing room had just become a second quarter of an hour. And the man she was about to manage it with had put a card inside her glove. He arrived at 5 minutes before 11. Marisol heard the carriage from the morning room, where she had been pretending for 20 minutes to read a book she had not opened. She heard the footman's step in the hall, the opening of the front door, and a voice she recognized after only 2 words. The Dowager Duchess had come with him. It was the one thing she had not prepared for. The Dowager was introduced into the morning room with the ceremony of a woman accustomed to being announced by butlers. Marisol stood up from the window seat and tried to remember every small piece of instruction Cressida had ever given her about posture and about not speaking first. The Dowager was small. She was small and white-haired and upright, with a face that had once been beautiful and had traded beauty for something more useful. Her eyes were the same wet slate as her son's, and they went over Marisol once, not unkindly, but completely, the way a clerk examines a contract before committing it to a drawer. "Miss Ashcombe," she said, "I am Lady Thorncliffe. My son you have already met." Behind his mother, Harlan Vere bowed. When his eyes met hers at the end of the bow, she felt it the way one feels a hand on the small of one's back. She curtsied. "You are very welcome, Your Grace." The Dowager sat without being asked. "I will not stay long. My son wished to call on you this morning, and I have come only to say what I have always said to him, which is that a young woman at her own breakfast table is worth more accurate study than a young woman in someone else's ballroom. May I look at you?" Marisol stood very still. "You're looking at me," she said, before she could stop herself. The Dowager's eyebrows rose by perhaps a single degree, and then, slowly, she smiled. It was a small, hard smile that contained no warmth and a great deal of appraisal, and Marisol understood that she had passed, without meaning to, some small preliminary test. "You are not what I expected," the Dowager said. "No," Marisol said, very softly. "My son had already told me as much. I confess I did not believe him. Harlan, do sit down. You make the room nervous." Harlan Vere sat. He took the armchair furthest from the window, and his eyes did not leave her. The 3 of them spoke, or rather, the Dowager spoke, for perhaps 10 minutes, about inconsequential things. The weather. A concert at the Assembly Rooms. A cousin of the Dowager's, who was marrying a Frenchman and would not be discussed further. Marisol answered each topic in the minimum number of words politeness required, and each time she spoke, she felt Harlan Vere's attention settle on her like light falling through a particular window. She understood, with a detachment that felt almost medical, that she was being studied. Not by the Dowager, who had made up her mind within the first minute, but by the man in the armchair, who was watching her in a way no one had ever watched her before. He was memorizing her. The thought arrived so naked that she turned her face away to hide it. The Dowager rose. She announced that she would wait in the carriage for 5 minutes only, during which time her son might conclude whatever business he had come to conclude. She inclined her head to Marisol with the precise calibration of a woman, signaling that a matter was under consideration, but not yet decided, and she swept out of the morning room with the butler following. The door closed. Marisol sat down on the window seat because her legs had decided on her behalf. Harlan Vere did not move from the armchair at once. When he did not come toward her. He walked to the mantelpiece and put one hand on it, and looked down into the cold hearth as if it had insulted him. "I must apologize," he said. "For what?" "For my mother. She is very direct." "Yes." Silence, briefly. broken only by the sound of a carriage in the street outside. "I put a card in your glove," he said. She looked at her hands in her lap. "Yes," she said. "I should not have done it." "No. I did it because I could not think how else to arrange to see you alone, and I wished to see you alone." She did not answer that. He turned from the mantelpiece. He stopped at a polite distance, half the length of the morning room away, and that distance felt both too far and not nearly enough. "Miss Ashcombe," he said, "I have been engaged, in a manner of speaking, to the idea of you for 3 months. I have not wished it. I have not resented it. I have regarded it as a duty requiring completion. When I walked into Wintersmere House last night, I intended to conclude our acquaintance by midnight. And now I have altered the schedule." She looked at him then. "To what?" she said. "I do not yet know. That is why I am here this morning." The clock on the mantelpiece ticked. "Your Grace," she said. "Harlan," he said, "please. That is not proper." "No, it is not. If you had met me yesterday evening without the knowledge that our families had been corresponding," she said, "would you have spoken to me?" He considered the question seriously, which was not what she had expected. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you looked at me as though you recognized me." The room went still. "I have never seen you before," Marisol said carefully. "I did not say you had. I said you looked at me as though you had." She stood up. Staying seated felt suddenly like letting a tide come in around her shoes. "I think," she said, "that you ought not to call on me again until you are certain of your own mind." "I am certain of my mind," he said. "I am uncertain of yours." "I am uncertain of mine," she said, without meaning to. He crossed the room then, not quickly. He crossed it in the way a man crosses a room when he has decided to, and he stopped within arm's reach, and he did not touch her. "May I call on you tomorrow?" he said. "No," she said. "The day after." "No. The beginning of next week," he said. "On Monday afternoon. Here. With my mother, if it is easier." "Monday," she said. "Monday." "Very well." He did not smile. He inclined his head. "Until Monday, Miss Ashcombe." Then he did a thing that was not at all proper. He lifted her hand, the hand that had been holding the book that morning, and he turned it over, palm up, and he laid his gloved thumb across the pulse at her wrist. It was a doctor's gesture. It was also not. He held it there for perhaps 2 seconds, and the gallop of her pulse was the plainest speech either of them had made all morning, and he heard it exactly, and she could see that he had. And then he released her hand, and bowed, and left the room. The front door opened and closed. The carriage in the street moved off. Marisol stood exactly where he had left her for a long time. When she finally sat down again on the window seat, she looked across the road and saw a man in a dark greatcoat on the opposite pavement, watching the door of the Ashcombe townhouse, who had not been there 5 minutes earlier, and who did not move away when she met his eye through the glass. He watched the house for another full minute. Then he turned and walked toward the square, and was gone. She rose and went to the hall. The butler was just closing the front door. "Hensley," she said. "The gentleman on the pavement opposite. Did you see him?" The butler hesitated, which was not like him. "I did, miss. I have, however, seen him 3 times this week. Twice in the afternoon, and once last evening as I was drawing the blinds." Marisol held the banister with a hand that had gone cold. "Have you told my father?" "I have not, miss. I am asking. I will speak to your father within the hour." She went upstairs and into her sister's room without knocking. Cressida was not there. Cressida had gone, as arranged, to the country of 2 streets over, and would not be back until 3. Marisol sat down on the edge of her sister's bed and looked at the Latin grammar on the shelf above the writing desk. She had promised. She had sworn. She had sat in this very room 3 months ago and sworn on their mother's ring that she would not tell a living soul. But a man had been watching the house 3 times in a week, and the only secret the Ashcombe household was keeping that could possibly be worth watching a house for was behind that Latin grammar. At 10 minutes past 3, a carriage stopped outside the house. Not her sister's. A footman knocked on the morning room door and presented, on a silver tray, a card. Mr. Tobin Ancliffe. Below the name, in a different hand, 2 words had been added in pencil. Urgent. Private. Marisol did not know the name. She turned the card over and saw, on the reverse, a single line in the same penciled hand. I am a friend of Mr. Corvin. He is in trouble. I will speak only to his lady. Her hand closed on the card so hard the edges bit through her glove. Show Mr. Ancliffe up, she said. Tobin Ancliffe was a small man in a brown coat, with ink on the side of one finger and the pale, worn look of a person who had not slept in days. He came into the morning room as if he expected to be thrown out of it, and when Marisol closed the door behind him, he exhaled and seemed to locate the floor again. You are Miss Ashcombe, he said. I am. He paused and looked at her more closely. Forgive me. Which Miss Ashcombe? The cold came up the back of her neck. Elias said there were 2 of you, he said. He said I was to ask for the one with the strawberry mark behind the left ear. She had a strawberry mark behind her left ear. Cressida did not. It was the smallest possible difference between them, the one their mother had used to tell them apart in the cradle. And it was the single identifying fact Elias Corvin had ever been given, because Cressida had given it to him one afternoon in a garden, and he had written it in the front of a pocketbook. I am Marisol, she said. The other one. Cressida is not at home. Mr. Ancliffe's face did something difficult. Then I should wait. No. Tell me. What has happened? He spoke quickly once he had begun, as men do when they have been carrying a weight. Elias had been arrested 2 nights ago, not for debt, not for anything that would require a magistrate in the morning. He had been taken up on a complaint of trespass laid by a gentleman in whose rooms Elias had been found in the small hours, and the complaint had been made with such particular language and such particular emphasis on letters and papers discovered in Elias's coat that the watch had held him past the customary hour and he was still held. Letters, Marisol said. Letters, Mr. Ancliffe said, addressed to him. In a lady's hand. The room did not tilt. It only went narrower. Who laid the complaint? She said. A Mr. Jarrett Halloway. She did not know the name. He is a gentleman of London, Mr. Ancliffe said. He had a business interest in Mr. Corvin's bank that went badly some months ago, and he formed an opinion of Mr. Corvin that was not friendly. He used a servant of his to watch the street where Mr. Corvin has rooms. On the night in question, Mr. Corvin was drawn out by a false note, and his rooms entered. The letters were taken deliberately. Yes, miss, the complaint was laid deliberately. I believe so. And he wishes, said Marisol, because she could see it now in a single clean outline, to use those letters against whatever family is embarrassed by them. Mr. Ancliffe did not answer. He did not need to. Where is Elias now? At the rooms of a Mr. Quinn, who has stood surety for him, and he will not be permitted to leave them until the matter is closed. Mr. Halloway has not yet named his price, but he has allowed it to be understood that he is a person who prefers to be paid without being asked. Where are the letters now? She said. In Mr. Halloway's keeping. She nodded. Tell Elias I have heard him. Tell him to remain where he is and not to attempt anything, because every step he takes will be watched. Go out by the service entrance. There is a man watching the front of the house. Mr. Ancliffe looked at her. Since when? He said. Since some days, apparently. He left without saying anything else. Marisol stood in the morning room alone. When Cressida returned at 3:45, flushed from the cold, Marisol was waiting for her in the upstairs hall. Cressida saw her face and stopped smiling. "Come into your room," Marisol said. She told her. She told her all of it, in the order Mr. Ancliffe had given it to her, and she watched her sister's face, the way one watches a child walk into cold water. The flush went out of Cressida's cheeks first, then her mouth. Then her hands went flat on her lap and stayed there, and her eyes did not move from a point on the carpet just in front of her slippers. "Oh," Cressida said. That was all she said for a long time. Then she lifted her face, and it was not the face of a frightened girl. It was the face of a person counting what she had in the room. "We will have to tell Papa," Cressida said. "I know. Not yet. No, not yet." "There is something else," Cressida said. "Your face has been a stranger's face since last night, and you have not told me why." Marisol did not answer. Cressida took her hand. "Did something happen at the ball?" "Yes." "What?" "He spoke to me for longer than 1/4 of an hour, and he came to call this morning." "What?" "He came with the Dowager. It was a formal call. I told no one because you were out. He wishes to call again on Monday. He put a card in my glove at the ball. He laid his thumb on the pulse at my wrist this morning, and he counted it." Cressida's hand had gone still in hers. "Did you tell him?" "No." "Did he ask?" "He did not ask. He asked whether I had looked at him as though I had recognized him, and I said I had not. But I believe he knows I lied." The room was very still. "You like him," Cressida said. The way she said it was not an accusation. It was a discovery, made calmly. "Yes," Marisol said, "and he likes you. The one he thinks is me." "Yes." Cressida looked at her hands. Then she said, "We have a great deal to arrange before Monday, because Papa must not learn about any of this until both pieces of it have been finished." "No," Marisol said. "Hear me. If Papa learns about Elias's arrest, without also learning that the Duke has withdrawn, Papa will force the Duke's match through before the arrest becomes public, because he will believe it is the only way to save us. And once the match is made, Papa's reputation will be staked upon it, and it will not be undone." "Yes," Marisol said, because she did understand, horribly. "Then the Duke must withdraw," Cressida said, "before Papa knows, of his own accord, on Monday. Say something to him, do something. Be something that makes him choose to walk away." Marisol did not answer. "I am sorry," Cressida said, "that I am asking you to break his heart instead of mine." Marisol closed her eyes. "He does not love me. He met me one evening and called once." Cressida did not laugh. "He put his hand on your pulse and counted it. Men do not do that to women whose hearts they do not want to know." Marisol did not answer her. Cressida pressed, more gently. "Did he speak to you by name?" "He said Miss Ashcombe, which neither of us corrects." "No." "And on Monday he will come back," Cressida said, "and ask whether he may speak to Papa. And if he does that, he means it. He came across a ballroom for you." "For you," Marisol said, "or for the woman he believed was you." Cressida did not answer that for some time. Then she said, quietly, "That is a question I do not know how to answer, and neither does he, and neither do you. Whichever way it is answered, one of us is going to be hurt, and one of us is going to be married." She left the room. That night, Marisol could not sleep. She lay in her bed with the card under the lamp, and she thought about Monday. She thought about what one would have to say to a man who had told her she wasn't boring in order to make him believe she was. After 2 in the morning, she got up. She went to her desk, and she took out a sheet of paper, and she started, several times, to write. Each time she tore the paper into small pieces, After the sixth attempt, she sat with her face in her hands and understood, with a cold, clear shame, that she did not want to write the letter. She did not want him to withdraw. She wanted him to call on Monday, and to call on the Monday after that. She thought, very calmly, I'm going to ruin my sister. Then she thought, more quietly, or my sister is going to ruin me. At 3:30, she heard a knock. Cressida was in her dressing gown, her braid undone. I cannot sleep either, she said. Marisol moved over in the bed, and Cressida got in, as she had not done since they were 14, and they lay side by side in the dark. We could run, Cressida said after a long time. Both of us. Away from London. Aunt Veronica in Scotland. Elias could follow when this is over. You would not have to do Monday at all. Marisol did not answer for a moment. Then she said, No. Why not? Because you love Elias, and I will not be the reason you lose him. And you, said Cressida, would you come away only because of me? Marisol did not answer that either. Cressida turned her head on the pillow. Mari, she said, if you want him, you must tell me. I cannot want him. He does not know my name. He knows the name he thinks is yours. That is different. It is not the same as mine. No, Cressida said softly, but it is a great deal closer than a stranger's. At dawn, Marisol sat up and went to the desk and wrote the thing she had been failing to write all night. It was not a letter to the Duke. It was a list. 2 columns. On one side, she wrote the reasons she must make him go away on Monday. On the other side, she wrote the reasons she must not. She folded the list and locked the drawer. The 2 columns had come out exactly, to the same length. Monday came. He arrived at 3, without his mother. She had not asked the butler to send him away, though she had considered it every hour since dawn. She had dressed in her own gown this time, not Cressida's, a pale green muslin with cream ribbon at the hem. She had told herself while putting it on that she was doing it for a practical reason, which was that he ought to see her as she was. She had not told herself the other reason. He was shown into the morning room alone. She was standing at the window when he came in. When she turned, she saw that he had brought a book, a small one, bound in brown leather and worn at the corners. Miss Ashcombe. Your Grace. He set the book on the side table. He did not sit. I have come without my mother because she gave me leave. She said you did not want her, and I agreed. Yes. You have been crying, he said. I have not. You have. In the last hour. It is in the rim of your eyes. I have a cold. No. You have been crying. She did not answer. Will you sit down? I would rather stand. So he stood too, across the room by the mantelpiece. I have come, he said, to ask whether you will permit me to address your father. She had rehearsed the answer for 2 days, a cool speech about their unsuitability, about the difference in their stations. She had written it on the back of her list and burned it. What came out was a single sentence. You should not. Why not? He said. Because I am not what you think. Tell me what you think I think. I think you believe you have met a woman who will make your life less dull. And I haven't. You have met a woman who will make it unrecognizable. He did not smile. Those are not the same sentence, he said. No, they are not. A long silence. Will you tell me what has happened in this house since Monday? She looked at the brown book. She thought, I could tell him now. And then she thought, no. Because if I tell him, and he does not go, I have ruined my sister. And if I tell him and he does go, I have ruined him too, for having preferred a lie to any other truth in the room. Nothing has happened, she said. He waited. Everything has happened, she said, more quietly, and nothing that I can tell you today. He took 1 step toward her. Is it that you do not wish to see me again? No, she said too quickly. Is it that you cannot see me again? She did not answer. Is it something that concerns your family? Yes. Is it something I could help with? She closed her eyes. If I asked you to go away now, and not to ask my father for anything, and not to call again, and not to write, would you do it? The silence went on long enough to become a separate thing in the room. Yes, he said. Her eyes opened. Would I like it? No. Would I do it? Yes. Why? She said. Because I will not be a man who pursues a woman who has told him to go. The words landed so hard she had to put her hand on the back of the chair. But you must tell me, he said, and you must tell me properly. You must look at me and say it, because I will not walk out of this room on a sentence that could have been said by someone else. She tried. She opened her mouth. She meant to say it. What came out was her own voice, very quiet, saying, I cannot. He did not move. I thought I could. I wrote it out. I rehearsed it. When you walked into this room, I had it in my mouth, and I cannot say it. Not to your face. Then do not, he said. But you should go. Yes. You should go and not come back until I write to you. All right. He did not move. Miss Ashcombe, one thing before I go. Yes. When I am wrong about you, in some particular, I would be obliged if you would tell me. Not today. In time. Whatever I've got wrong, I would rather know it from you than from anyone else. She could not answer. He crossed the room only as far as the side table, and he laid his hand on the brown book. I brought this for you. It is of no great value. I have had it since I was 12, and I have read it more than any other book I own. I meant to lend it to you. I find I would like to leave it anyway. He did not press it into her hands. He left it on the table. He came no closer. Until you write, he said, and bowed, and went out. The front door closed. Marisol stood at the window and watched his carriage move off, and then she crossed the room on legs that did not quite work, and she picked up the brown book. Inside the front cover, in a boy's careful hand, was his name, Harlan Vare, a date, and beneath the date, in the same hand, but in ink a different color, as if added years later, a single line. The only book I have ever wished to read twice. She held it against her chest for a long time. Then she sat down at the writing desk, took out a piece of paper, and began, before she had permission from herself or anyone, to write him back. The letter she wrote that afternoon was short. She did not sign it with a name. She did not write his either. She wrote one line, and she sent it round before she could lose her nerve. The book will be returned when I am able to return it. Until then, please consider it kept against an honest hour. A. She sealed it, and sent it by a footman she trusted to go on foot, and she did not wait for an answer, and she did not receive one. What she received, 3 hours later, was a different letter. It came on cream paper, and the seal was wax, the color of dried blood, and the hand on the outside was unfamiliar. Miss Ashcombe, it read, I take the liberty of writing to you, because I believe we have, between us, a mutual acquaintance in some difficulty, and because the difficulty is of a kind that tends to grow if left unattended. I shall be at the assembly rooms on Wednesday evening at 9. If it should please you to take the air near the East Terrace at that hour, I should be obliged. Holloway. She read it twice. She put it on the desk, face down. She stood up and sat down again. Then she went to find her sister. Cressida read it with her mouth very still and her hands very flat. He wants to see you, she said. He wants to see one of us, and the one of us who goes will be the one he does not know. Yes, Cressida looked at her steadily. You will go. I will go. Marisol, Cressida said, do you understand what he will want? Money. Or something worth money. Or silence. Or silence, yes. Cressida set the letter on the desk. Do not go alone, she said. I cannot take you. He would know at once. Then take someone. Who? Cressida was quiet for a moment. Take the Duke, she said. Marisol stared at her. He does not know, Cressida said. About Elias. About any of it. But he knows there is something. He told you so yesterday. He offered to help you if you would let him. You told me he did. That is an offer, Mari, not a courtesy. I cannot ask him for this. You can ask him for this precisely because you have not yet asked him for anything else. But I would have to tell him. All of it. Cressida held her eyes. Yes, she said. All of it. And then he will go. Or he will not. They looked at each other, and the room was very quiet. And for the first time in 3 months, Marisol felt the shape of the thing they had been doing, not as a sister's favor, not as a delay, but as what it really was. A lie that had been built on the backs of 2 men, each of whom had a right to better. I cannot tell him by letter, Marisol said. No. And I cannot tell him here. No. Then I must go to him. Cressida did not speak for a moment. You must go to him, she said, and you must do it tonight. Before Wednesday. Before we are any further in than we already are. Marisol stood up. The hardest part, she said, is that I do not think he will forgive me. The hardest part, Cressida said, is that I wouldn't in his place. She took her sister's hand and held it hard. I am the one who ought to pay for this, Cressida said. Not you. But he is the one you have hurt, and it must be you who says so. I am sorry, Mari, for every piece of it. From the first minute in the dressing room, Marisol said nothing, because she could not. She went upstairs, and she put on a plain dark cloak, and when the house was quiet at 9 in the evening, and her father had gone to his club, she left by the kitchen door with a maid who had been sworn to silence, and she took a hackney to Thorncliffe House on Portman Square. It was raining a little, not enough to matter. The hackney set her down at the corner because she had told it to, and she walked the last 20 yards herself. The butler who opened the door looked at her twice before he remembered to school his face. I am Miss Ashcombe, she said. I must speak with His Grace. It is urgent, and it is not a matter I can conduct by message. The butler did not argue. He showed her into a library on the ground floor that was too large and too cold, and he left her there. She stood by the fire that had burned down to a glow, and she waited. He came in within 3 minutes. He was in his shirt sleeves. He had not put on a coat. He was carrying a candle, which said he had been reading somewhere else in the house, and the way he stopped in the doorway when he saw her said that he had not expected, tonight, to see her at all. Miss Ashcombe, he said. She did not answer. He closed the door behind him and set the candle on a side table, and he did not cross to her. Is someone ill? He said. No. Is someone dead? No. Are you in danger? Not tonight. He took that in. He did not move. Speak, he said. It came out of her slowly and without grace, because grace was not what the sentence was for. I am not Cressida, she said. He did not move at all. My sister is Cressida Ashcombe. She is the one your family has been corresponding with. She is the one your mother was told to expect at Wintersmere House a week ago. She did not come. She asked me to come in her place for 1 hour, in her gown and under her name, because she is in love with another man, and did not trust her own face in a room with yours. I agreed. I wore her pearls. I wore her perfume. I walked across that gallery carrying her name. You crossed the floor to me believing I was her. I let you believe it. I have let you believe it every moment since, up to and including this afternoon when you left me your book. The fire gave a small sound. He did not speak. My name, she said, is Marisol. I was born 4 minutes after Cressida. I have a strawberry mark behind my left ear that she does not have. It is the only thing about our bodies that is different. Her hair falls to the left, and mine to the right, and no one who has not loved us for a long time has ever noticed. You had no way of knowing. It was our mother who used to tell us apart by this one mark, because she had to. Still he did not move. I came tonight, Marisol said, because a man has written to me. His name is Jarrett Halloway. He wishes me to come to the East Terrace of the Assembly Rooms at 9 on Wednesday evening. He has a number of letters belonging to my sister, addressed to the man she is in love with, a Mr. Elias Corvin, which letters were taken from Mr. Corvin over a week ago by a false trespass complaint laid by Mr. Halloway himself. Mr. Corvin is held at a friend's rooms pending closure of the matter. Mr. Halloway has not yet named his price. I believe he intends to name it to me on Wednesday. He will be expecting to meet my sister. He will instead meet me, and he will know, before I have said anything, that there has been a substitution, because he has been watching our house for some days, and he has seen the gown I was wearing at the ball, and will therefore know it was not Cressida. He will use that against her, and against me, and against my father, and he will make, I should imagine, a very considerable demand. I came tonight because I did not know how to carry this by myself. She had said it all. It had come out of her like water through a cracked jar, all of it at once, and she was empty. He had not moved from the doorway. His face had not changed. "Thank you," he said, quietly, "for telling me." She waited. He did not speak again at once. He walked past her, to the fire, and he stood with his back to her for a long moment, and he looked down into the glow. One of his hands was flat against the mantelpiece. The other was not visible. "Marisol," he said. It was the first time he had said her name, and because it was the first time, it was the last thing she would remember about the evening. "Yes," she said. "What was true? What was true? Tonight. In this room. Just now. Was any of it true, or was the whole of it a further arrangement? Because I must know, before I speak to you again, whether I have just been told the truth or merely the next story. It is the truth. Are you sure?" "I am sure. How am I to tell?" "There is the strawberry mark," she said. He turned then. He crossed the room. He did not stop at a polite distance. He stopped a foot away from her, and he said, "Show me." She turned her head and lifted her hair. He looked. He did not touch. The candle behind them was enough. After a moment he said, "Yes." Then he stepped back. He walked to the window and put his hand flat on the frame and didn't look at her. "Do you know," he said, "how I felt at the ball when I saw you?" "No," she said. "I felt I had been waiting for you for a very long time and had not known it." Her throat closed. "Do you know," he said, "what I thought when I put my hand on your pulse on Tuesday morning?" "No," I thought. I have never been so clearly answered without a word. I thought, this is a woman who cannot lie to me with her body, even if she means to. He was very quiet for a moment. "I thought I was in the company," he said, "of a woman who was honest." "I am sorry. I do not think you understand what you are apologizing for. I do not think I do either. But I should like you to leave this house now, please. Not because I do not want you in it, because I am not sure of what I would say to you in the next quarter of an hour, and I would rather not say it and then regret it. I will go, thank you." She moved toward the door. Her legs did not feel as though they were hers. She was at the door, with her hand on the handle, when he spoke again, and his voice was different, as if he had set something down between one sentence and the next. "Marisol," he said. She stopped. "Was there a moment," he said, when it stopped being an errand for your sister. She did not turn. Yes, she said. When? At the window, in the gallery. When you asked me if I was always so direct, he said nothing for a long breath. And the book, he said. Today, when I left it. I did not deserve the book. I did not ask if you deserved it. I asked if you wanted it. She closed her eyes. Yes, she said. Very quietly. Then that is one thing at least, he said, that has been true between us. He did not move at once. He looked at the fire. Then he spoke again, more evenly. On Wednesday, he said. At 9. The East Terrace. She waited. You will not go alone. I have no one to take. My father cannot know yet. You will not go alone, he said again, because I will be there. She turned. Why? Because the man who has threatened you is not a man a woman should meet in a corridor after dark, sister or no sister. And because whatever else is true between you and me, I am the one he is expecting you to arrive without. And that is an advantage I am not going to throw away. But I have lied to you. Yes. And you will still come? Yes. Why? He looked at her, and his face was not angry, and it was not kind, and it was not any one thing she could name. Because I do not know yet, he said, which of you I crossed the floor for. She did not answer. He turned back to the window. Go home, he said. Do not be seen. Tell no one I am coming on Wednesday, not even your sister. Until the morning of, I will. And Marisol. Yes, the book stays with you. She did not trust her voice. She nodded, although his back was to her, and he could not see it. And she went out of the library and down the long, cold hall to the front door. The butler opened it for her without a word. On the step, she did not look back at the house. She walked to the corner where the hackney was waiting, and she got in, and she did not weep, because she could not yet, because the thing she had done was still too large to weep inside. The hackney turned onto the main street. At the far end of the square, she saw, through the rear window, a man in a dark greatcoat step out of the shadow of a plane tree and watch the Thorncliffe house for a long moment before walking away. She did not know if he had seen her go in. She did not know if he had been sent. She only knew that the watcher had followed her, and that between now and Wednesday, she had 2 days to prepare for a man she had not yet met, with the help of a man whose name she had stolen, to rescue a sister who was at that moment sitting at home waiting. She put her hand in her pocket and found there, folded small, the card he had slipped into her glove at the ball. Miss Ashcombe, I should very much like to call on you tomorrow. H.V. She held it until the hackney reached her own street. Then she went inside and upstairs without speaking to anyone, and she lay on top of her bedcovers in her cloak and her shoes until morning. She did not sleep. At 7, a footman scratched at her door with a note. It had been brought round by a servant of Thorncliffe. No seal. One line. I will be at the East Terrace at 8 on Wednesday. I will find you before he does. H. She folded it once and put it beneath her pillow, and for the first time in 2 days, she closed her eyes. Wednesday evening came slowly, and then all at once. Marisol was dressed by 7 in a dark blue gown with no ornament, and she was in a hackney by 7:45, alone, because she had told Cressida she was alone, and had told the maid she was alone, and had not told anyone, not even her sister, that she was not. The assembly rooms at 8 in the evening were half full. A subscription concert was being held in the main hall. Marisol slipped in with a small group of older women whose names were taken at the door without looking, and she walked through the vestibule and along the corridor and out onto the East Terrace, which opened onto a garden of clipped laurels below a stone balustrade. Harlan Vare was standing at the far end, with his back to the door, looking out at the garden. He turned when he heard her step. He did not come to her. He nodded once. She crossed the terrace and stood 3 feet from him and waited. "You came early," he said. "So did you." "Good." He did not look at her for long. He looked at the garden. "He will come by the south door," he said. "I have been watching the house for 3/4 of an hour. He will come alone. He will not approach until he has walked the terrace twice to see if anyone else is here. How do you know? Because I know the man now. I have spent 2 days finding out." She looked at him. "What have you found?" "Mr. Jarrett Halloway is, as your Mr. Ancliffe said, a gentleman of London. He is also, as your Mr. Ancliffe did not say, a man who has been paid in the past 12 months by a particular household to produce a particular embarrassment in another particular household. He has made a small career of it. He is not, on his own, dangerous. He is dangerous because someone is paying him." "Who?" Harlan looked at her then. "I have a guess. If I am right, I will tell you before we leave this terrace." She did not argue. They stood in silence for perhaps 2 minutes. "I must say one thing to you," he said quietly, "before he arrives." "Yes." "Whatever I do tonight, whatever I say to him, I will be speaking as a man who is engaged to be married to Miss Ashcombe of this city. I will not correct the assumption. I will not permit him to correct it. When he threatens your sister, I will threaten him back in your sister's voice and in your sister's interest. And I will do it so that he believes my family has been standing behind that door for a month. Do you understand? Yes. I will say things tonight that are not true. Yes. When I have said them, I will not take them back afterwards in front of him. If you speak, you must speak as though they are true. You must not apologize. You must not explain. Can you do that? Yes. He nodded once and turned back to the garden. A door opened at the south end of the terrace. A man in a fawn coat stepped out. He was of middle height, perhaps 40, with a face so unremarkable that Marisol understood at once why he had been able to watch the house 3 times in a week without being noticed. He saw her. He did not at first see Harlan, who had stepped back into the shadow of the doorway. Mr. Halloway walked along the terrace with an easy, unhurried stride. He stopped 10 feet away and inclined his head. "Miss Ashcombe," he said, "how good of you to come." Marisol did not answer. Mr. Halloway smiled, a little, not unkindly. "I will not waste your time. I have in my possession a number of letters of a private nature addressed to a certain young gentleman. I do not propose to make those letters the property of the common post. Neither do I propose to keep them free of charge. A sum, modest by the standards of your family, would see them in the nearest fire by Friday." "How modest," Marisol said. £4,000. Marisol did not move, and in return, the letters themselves, and my word as a gentleman that the matter will not be spoken of. "Your word as a gentleman," said another voice, "would fit comfortably in a thimble." Harlan Vare stepped out of the doorway. Mr. Halloway's expression did not change quickly. It changed slowly, by increments, like water at the edge of freezing. "Your Grace," he said. "Mr. Halloway, you are a surprise." "I am not," said Harlan. "I am a consequence." The silence that followed was not quite silence. It had the quality of a held breath. "Miss Ashcombe and I," Harlan said, "are to be married. The banns will be read on Sunday at St. Anselm's. The settlement has been drafted between our solicitors, and the announcement will appear in Monday's papers. Any letters you produce against her will therefore be produced against my wife, and by extension, against my household, and by further extension, against my mother, who is a woman of very long memory and a particular talent for correspondence. Do you understand me? You are bluffing. I am not. The banns have not been called. They will be. On Sunday. You may walk to St. Anselm's and listen. Marisol did not move. She did not breathe. She did not turn her head to look at him, because if she had, she would have given the whole of it away. Mr. Halloway laughed a small, dry laugh. Your Grace, he said, I confess I am impressed. You are a fast worker, particularly for a man who, when last I was informed, had not yet decided which Ashcombe he was marrying. Something in the air of the terrace went cold. Marisol's hand closed on the stone of the balustrade behind her. Harlan did not move. What you said, he said. I said, Your Grace, that you have been slow to choose. I understand the confusion. They are, I am told, very alike. Who told you? Mr. Halloway's smile did not shift. You have misunderstood me, Your Grace, he said. I am not paid to answer questions. I am paid to ask them. £4,000. By Friday. In a bank draft. To the address written on this card. He produced a card from his coat and laid it on the stone rail. He bowed. He walked past them into the doorway and out into the corridor, and they heard, very clearly, the sound of the south door opening and closing. Marisol's legs gave. She did not fall. She put her hand flat on the balustrade, and she stayed upright. Harlan said nothing for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, I was right. About what? About who was paying him? She looked at him. Tell me. My aunt, he said. Clemence. The room, the terrace, the garden, the cold stone beneath her palm, all tilted at once and then settled. Your aunt. Yes. Why? Because she has a daughter of her own, 18, unmarried. My mother had spoken to her about a match with me some years ago, before my father died. My aunt has not forgotten. When she learned I was to be introduced to an Ashcombe, she set about preparing, quietly, the means of ending the match before it could be made. Halloway is her instrument. He has been watching your house for her. He found your sister's letters almost by accident, reported them to my aunt, and my aunt told him to wait. For what? For you to come to me in distress, the way a bride would, so that my aunt could afterwards tell me I had been deceived and ought to withdraw. She expected you on Monday. She did not expect you on Monday night. Marisol put both hands on the balustrade. You knew this when I came to your house. I suspected. You did not say. If I had told you then, you would have believed I was speaking in the voice of a man who had been lied to and wished to turn the lie around. I wanted you to tell me the rest without my help. You did. I am grateful. She could not speak. Marisol. Yes, I meant what I said just now. About the banns. About St. Anselm's. She looked at him then. His face was very quiet. But she said, You said you did not know which of us you had crossed the floor for. I said that on Monday, he said, when I was angry, and when I was afraid, and when I had not yet sat up with it for 2 days. I know now. Tell me. He did not cross to her. He said it from where he stood. I crossed the floor, he said, for a woman wearing a perfume that did not belong to her, because I could see it did not. I crossed the floor for a woman who looked at the door 3 times. Your sister would not have looked at the door. Your sister would have looked at me. I know that now. I did not know it then. I only knew that I saw you. She put her hand over her mouth. I am going to speak to your father tomorrow morning. I am going to ask permission to court you. Not Cressida. You. Properly. In daylight. With your name on every paper. I am going to call the banns on Sunday as I said I would. I am going to marry you within the month if you will have me, because I am not going to let my aunt, or Halloway, or anyone else, take from you a thing that I have only just understood was mine. Harlan, she said, It came out as her first use of his first name, and she did not notice she had used it. Yes. What of Cressida? Cressida will marry Mr. Corvin if she wishes. I will pay Holloway nothing. I will go to my aunt tomorrow morning and tell her she has two choices, which are to call off her man tonight and burn the letters, or to receive by Monday afternoon a visit from me and from my mother, in which every penny she has drawn from the family estate these last 5 years will be the subject of a careful audit in front of my solicitor. You would do that to your own aunt. I would do it to save your sister. I would do it to save you. I would do it for a thimbleful of your trouble if I had to. She was crying. She had not meant to. She had not cried in the library on Portman Square because she had not been able to. She was crying now because someone had finally said a true thing aloud to her, and she had not expected it to hurt. He crossed to her then. He did not embrace her. He stood quietly in front of her, and he laid his gloved thumb, exactly as he had once before, across the pulse at her wrist. He counted. She could feel him counting. There, he said. That one is mine. It was past 10 when she reached home. Cressida was waiting on the stairs, a shawl round her shoulders, her hands folded in her lap the way their mother folded hers whenever she was trying not to worry. Marisol, she said, tell me. Marisol sat on the step below her and told her everything. The aunt, Holloway, the banns, the threat, Elias to be free by morning, the letters to be burned. And at the end, she told her about the pulse. Cressida did not speak for a long time. You must marry him, she said. I will. She looked up then, and her eyes were full. I have spent 3 months believing I was the brave sister, the one who loved against sense. And you, Mari, went across one ballroom and risked more in an hour than I have risked in my life. I risked you. No. You saved me. You. She reached out and took Marisol's hand. I should have gone myself on Monday, she said. I let you wear my pearls because it was easier for me. It is over now, Marisol said. Not for me. Not yet. But it will be, because of you. They sat together on the step until the candle on the hall table guttered out. He came to breakfast the next morning. He was announced at 9:20 by a footman who had been given no preparation, and Marisol's father, reading the paper with his second cup of coffee, looked up with the alarm of a man who has begun to suspect that his household had been keeping something from him. Mr. Ashcombe, said Harlan from the doorway. I apologize for the hour. I would be obliged if we might speak. Marisol was already on her feet. Cressida was already on her feet. Their mother, who did not know any of it yet, was half on her feet with a piece of toast still in her hand. Papa, Marisol said. Let me speak first. Her father looked between the three of them. He set down the paper. He said, very slowly, Sit down, all of you. Your Grace, will you take coffee? He took coffee. What followed was not quick, and it was not tidy. Marisol told her father everything, with her sister holding her hand beneath the table. And she did it without looking at Harlan, because she knew that if she looked at him, she would not be able to speak at all. When she had finished, her father was silent for a long time. Then he looked at Cressida. Is there a Mr. Corvin? He said. There is, Papa. Is he a good man? Yes, Papa. Is he in a position now to support a wife? He will be, once his name has been cleared, which should be today. Her father nodded once. He did not raise his voice. He did not do any of the things Marisol had feared he would do. He only looked very tired. I would have helped you, he said quietly. Both of you. I would have found a way. You did not need to carry this alone. I know that now, Papa, said Cressida. And you, he said to Marisol, you went to Thorncliffe House alone at night. Yes, he closed his eyes. Then he opened them and looked at Harlan. Your Grace. Sir, you came to this table this morning, I take it, with a request. I did. Name it. I should like permission, said Harlan, to marry your younger daughter. Not in the manner of a settlement between families, in the manner of a man who has been permitted, over the course of a week, to see more clearly than he has ever seen anything else. Her father looked at her. Marisol, he said. Do you wish this? Yes, Papa. He looked at Harlan for a long moment. Then you have my permission, he said. You have, in fact, my thanks. You have considerably more of both than either of you deserve, which is a condition I shall be asking both of you to work off over the course of the next 40 years. Marisol laughed. It came out broken and wet and surprised. Her father reached across the table and took her hand. Your mother, he said, is going to require separate instruction. Her mother, who had been following none of it with a piece of toast still in her hand, set the toast down slowly. Someone, she said, had better start at the beginning. The banns were called at St. Anselm's on Sunday. The announcement appeared in the Monday papers exactly as Harlan had said it would. The scandal, when it broke in the way he had known it would. His aunt was visited on the Thursday morning by her nephew and her sister-in-law, and the visit lasted 40 minutes, and at the end of it, a fire was lit in the drawing-room grate, and a quantity of letters was burned. Mr. Jarrett Halloway left London for Bristol by the evening coach, and was not heard of in the city again. Lady Clements was not permitted to attend the wedding. What the rest of London said was much as might be expected. It was said that the Duke of Thorncliffe had been deceived at the Wintersmere ball by an Ashcombe twin pretending to be her sister, and had discovered it, and had married her anyway. It was said that the elder Miss Ashcombe had married, quite suddenly, a young gentleman of no particular prospects, and of considerable quiet charm, and had gone to live in the country. It was said that the Dowager Duchess of Thorncliffe, whose opinion was the only one that finally counted, had declared the younger Miss Ashcombe to be the best thing to happen to her son in 15 years. That one was the truth. Marisol did not attempt to correct any of the stories. A story told often becomes armor, and there are worse things to wear. They were married in the private chapel at Thorncliffe at the end of the month. It was a small wedding. Marisol's father gave her away. Her mother wept through the vows with the satisfaction of a woman whose daughters had both married, against all likelihood, men they actually loved. Cressida stood as her sister's witness in a pale green gown borrowed from Marisol, in a small but deliberate reversal of a favor. Elias Corvin stood beside her, quiet with the look of a man who knew precisely how close he had come to losing everything. When the moment came for Marisol to speak her vows, she looked at Harlan, and she spoke them in her own voice. And for the first time in any room the two of them had been in together, she was called by her own name. From the first word of the ceremony to the last, he watched her mouth each syllable as if it were a thing he had waited for. When the priest asked whether he would have her, he answered so quickly that the priest had to pause before continuing. The dowager sat in the first pew. When the vows were exchanged, she inclined her head once, and this time the calibration was approval. Afterwards, in the long gallery, the dowager drew Marisol aside for only a moment. I told Harlan on the morning of the Wintersmere ball that I expected the evening to produce a match. I was not wrong. I was merely wrong about which of you the match would be with. Marisol did not know what to say. You will do, the dowager said. That is the highest compliment I have ever paid anyone, and I should very much prefer that you not repeat it. They went to Thorncliffe Park for the summer. 2 years later, Marisol stood at the long window in the library at Thorncliffe Park, watching the rain come in across the lawn. It was nearly October. The house was full of her family. Her sister was staying for a week with Elias and their 2-month-old son, named for Marisol's father, and Marisol's own mother was in the drawing room being loud about grandchildren. And somewhere above them, her father was arguing with Harlan about a question of tenancy that had absorbed both of them for 3 days. The library door opened and closed. "Wool gathering," Harlan said. She smiled without turning. "Remembering," she said. "What?" "The ball." He came up behind her and looked out at the rain. "I was afraid," she said, "that if I told you the truth, you would go." "I have been thinking about that," he said, "more than I should. About the library, about the night you came to the house. And I have come to think that you did not tell me a lie that night. You told me 2 truths in the order they had happened in. You told me first the truth of the ballroom, which was that you had come in your sister's name. And then, by coming, you told me the other truth, which was that you were the one I had crossed the floor for." She turned toward him. "Was any of it real?" she said. "In the morning room, on the Tuesday." "All of it was real," he said. "You were real. The name was not." She lifted her hand and laid it flat against his chest, over the slow count of his own pulse. "This is real. Yes. This is mine. Yes." He caught her hand and turned it over, palm up, and laid his thumb across her wrist, and he counted. "There," he said. "That one is still mine." From the drawing room, very clearly, came her mother's voice, asking somebody if they had ever heard anything so absurd. "We should go in," Marisol said. "In a moment." "Harlan." "Yes." "Do you know what my mother used to say, when she could tell me apart from Cressida by the mark behind my ear?" "No." "She used to say, 'You cannot hide the real one. The real one is always the one with the mark.'" He smiled, and she still was not used to the whole of it. "I found the mark on Monday night," he said. "You did not." "I did. I saw it in the gallery when you looked back over your shoulder at me. Your hair had shifted. I did not know what I had seen. I only knew that I had seen something that made the woman in front of me different from every other woman in the room. You knew. I did not know. I had seen." She leaned her forehead against his coat. They stood there for a while longer with the rain coming down, and when at last they went in to join the others, Cressida looked up and caught her sister's eye, and there passed between them the small, private smile of 2 people who have been through a thing together and have come out the other side of it, with everything they meant to save. That night, after the house was quiet, Marisol went back into the library alone and took down from the shelf a small brown book bound in worn leather. She opened it to the front page and read, "The only book I have ever wished to read twice." Below it, in a different ink, added on the morning after their wedding, was a new line. "I have read it twice. I will read it again." She closed the book and put it carefully back again on the shelf. "Thank you for staying with Marisol and Harlan until the end. Their story began with a borrowed gown, a borrowed name, and a quarter of an hour that was never supposed to matter. It became the story of a woman who discovered that the thing most worth having is the one she almost gave away to keep someone else safe, and of a man who learned that the woman he was promised was not the woman he was meant for. They did not have an easy first year. Secrets kept that long do not unmake themselves politely, and there was a great deal of forgiveness to ask for, and a great deal of trust to rebuild. But the pulse he counted in a morning room on a Tuesday was the same pulse he counted 2 years later in a library at Thorncliffe, and both times it told him the same thing. If you are not subscribed yet, press that subscribe button and ring the bell, because there are more stories waiting. More borrowed gowns, more crossed ballrooms, more women who discover, in the quietest hour of the evening, that the person who saw them first was the person they had stopped hoping for. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories exist.